Hey, good morning. It's Miss Reed with day 11. This might be a lengthy video just because we are recycling with a new week. So we are going to be starting with week 3, day 11. So our first is cursive. So we have U and V. So our words were umbrella, use, under, and up. And then on the back side for the V, we had victory, van, viola, violin, and vase. And we only have about 2 more days of cursive, then we will be done. Taking a look at our week 3 morning work, starting with Monday. It says order the numbers from least to greatest. So, of course, we can see that there's one number that only has 2 digits, so that one would come first. So that would be number 1. I'm just going to write above it. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, this is math. We'll come back to math. Looking at Monday, it says, is the underlined verb past, present, or future tense? Jupiter is the 5th planet from the sun. So if we were talking about past tense, we would say Jupiter was the 5th planet. And if we are talking about future tense, it would be Jupiter will be the 5th planet. But when we talk about today, we use is. So it is present tense. Which best completes the sentence? His, its, and their. The planet gets blank name from Jupiter, the king of the Roman gods. So if I wanted to replace the word planet, would I use his, its, or their? So first of all, since planet is only one, I cannot say their because there is more than one. And planet is not technically gender related. It's not a he or she. So I can't say his. So the planet gets its name. What does it really mean? I have a science test tomorrow. I need to hit the books. So when someone says, I need to hit the books, it means that they need to start studying. Make sure my power's not. All right. So when he says, I need to hit the books, need to start studying. So that's non-literal. If it was literal, he would be actually hitting the books. You gotta be patient with me. My computer is not charging. All right, looking at the next one, we have this week's word list, so we don't have to worry about that yet until we get to Tuesday. There we go. The next one says underline the conjunction in the sentence. Jupiter is the largest planet and it has the most moons. So when we are connecting two sentences together, that's when we use our conjunction. So if I were to take this and put it into 2 separate sentences, I would have Jupiter is the largest planet. And my second sentence would be, it has the most moons. So the conjunction that is conjoining those 2 sentences, 2 phrases together, is the word and. So I'm going to underline it in a different color. Like that. Then the next box says, which is correct? More brightly or most brightly? So more if we are comparing, most if it's superlative. So the sun, the moon, and Venus shine blank than Jupiter. Since I'm comparing the sun, the moon, and Venus to Jupiter, I'm going to use more. So the sun, the moon, and Venus shine more brightly than Jupiter. And the last one says the root fin means end, last, or limit. So we're going to refer back to this box to help us with these week's questions. Flipping over to the math, so we said that 99, since it's only a 2-digit number, is going to go first. So put number 1 over it. So that leaves us with 378 and 309. So 378, 309, looking at the tens place, 1 is a 0 and 1 is a 7. So you always look for the least, or the number that has the more least value, which would be the 0, 309, because it comes first on a number line. So that 309 would come in second, and then the greatest on here would be 378. The next one says, Haley's sticker collection has 479 stickers. Her best friend has 498 stickers. How many stickers do they have all together? I'm circling the word all together. That's my key word. Then I'm going to add those numbers together. 479 plus 498. 9 plus 8 gives me 17. Carry over the 1. 1 plus 7 is 8. 8 plus 9 is 17. Carry over the 1. 1 plus 4 is 5. And 5 plus 4 is 9. So altogether, they have 977 stickers. The next box is find the product, the answer to a multiplication problem. 8 times 5 equals 40. 8 times 8 equals 64. 3 times 4 equals 12. 0 times 4 is 0. And 8 times 1 equals 8. Next, we have Johnny's bedroom has an area of 90 square feet. What might the length and the width of his bedroom be? So when we are finding the area, we multiply the length times width. So that is the two sides together. So say I draw a rectangle, and what I'm trying to find is the two sides right here. So what two numbers do we know that equal 90 when they are multiplied together? So if 90 is my product, I need my two factors. So 10 and 9 when multiplied together, they equal 90. So I'm just going to say 9 feet and 10 feet. Next we have, how are these two shapes similar? So once again, one is a upside down trapezoid and the other one is a rhombus, more of a diamond, but we're using rhombus now. It's like a really tilted square. They both are four-sided shapes. They are both quadrilaterals. They have at least one set of parallel sides. At least one set of parallel sides. That's the one I put down, at least one set of parallel sides. Compare the fractions using greater than, less than, or equal to. So once again, you can draw a picture for this one. So say I'm going to draw two circles. One's going to be in thirds, one's going to be in halves. I shaded in 1/3 and 1/2. Based on my findings, I see that 1/2 is the greater fraction because more is shaded in. So 1/3 is less than 1/2. Alligator mouth is eating the 1/2. Every Saturday, Jessica has dance class beginning at 11:15 a.m. If her class is 1 hour and 30 minutes long, at what time will her class end? So I look for 11:15 on the AM side. And I just drew like a very dark tick mark right here. So here's 11. And then once again, every tick mark represents 15 minutes. So that's why the next one to the number 11 is bolded. Then to find out for 30 minutes, I'm going to count my tick marks, 15 plus 15. So go to the one that's in the middle. So it's almost touching the one in the middle, and then go to the next one. So right now I'm at 11:45. And then she said an hour. So I'm going to hop over an hour from 11:45. So she should end at 12:45. And then I'm going to write it off to the side, 12:45 p.m. because we have now reached over to the p.m. side. And if the container on the left holds 2 liters, about how many liters does the other container hold? Let's see. If the container on the left holds 2 liters, about how many liters does the other container hold? And I want to say, let me see. And it looks like that they're the same size container. So since it looks like it's double the amount, I'm going to say 4 liters. And that one's tricky. I'm just going to go with this. So I'm going to put 4 and then a capital L for 4 liters. Just because it looks like double the amount, 4 liters. They were both the same size container. All right, so that is it for our morning work. Taking a look at our homework. It's called No Boys Allowed. It says, Vanya clipped the No Boys Allowed sign onto her fort with a clothespin. She'd been working on it all afternoon. Still, something wasn't quite right. The entrance was just 2 picnic blankets hanging down from tree branches. They draped together like curtains. Vanya had wanted her fort to have a tunnel for an entrance. She'd searched her garage, attic, and basement for a large empty box but hadn't found one. Know anyone who recently bought a refrigerator? Vanya asked her dog. Lucky. I bet they have a big empty box. Lucky looked up at Vanya. Ruff, ruff, he barked, then chased after a yellow butterfly. Wow, Vanya. Did you build that? A voice from behind Vanya asked. Vanya turned to see her neighbor, Abraham. He was stopped with his bike on the sidewalk. That fort is so cool. Can I check out the inside? Vanya shook her head firmly. Sorry, no boys allowed. See the sign? That's not fair, Abraham protested. Rules are rules, she told him. I guess I'll go see who is at the playground. Abraham looked sad as he got on his bike, and Vanya felt a pang of guilt. She turned around to look at her fort again so she wouldn't have to watch Abraham right away. Want to see inside my fort, Lucky? Vanya asked her dog. Lucky wagged his tail. But as Vanya looked from Lucky to her fort, she realized that her no boys allowed rule had created a big problem. Lucky was a boy. So if Abraham couldn't go in, neither could Lucky. Suddenly her fort didn't seem as much fun. It seemed kind of lonely. Hey, Vanya, called Abraham. I found something you might want. I thought you were headed to the playground, said Vanya. I was. Abraham jumped off his bike, but I overheard you talking about wanting a cardboard box. As I was biking to the playground, I saw Mr. Abrood put a big box out at the end of his driveway for recycling to pick up. I came back to get you because it's too big to carry back here by myself. Really? You are going to help me? Even with my no boys allowed rule? Vanya asked. Abraham shrugged. There's no rule against being nice, is there? Nope, there isn't. Vanya walked over to the sign hanging from her fort. She ripped off the word no, and the sign now read, Boys Allowed. You're welcome in my fort anytime, Abraham, said Vanya. Let's go get that box. So, very good story. Has a good theme behind it. So it says, before you read, make a prediction about this story based on the title. So since it's called No Boys Allowed, I would think that'd be something that does not allow boys in. Or a place that does not allow boys in. Says, who is the main character in the story? Once again, we see from the first paragraph, first sentence right away, Vanya is the one who made this. So the main character is, because it's a complete sentence, the main character is Vanya. Where does the story take place? So we see it says, Vanya clipped the No Boys Allowed sign onto her fort with a clothespin. She'd been working on it all afternoon. Still, something wasn't quite right. The entrance was just 2 picnic blankets hanging down from the tree branches. They draped together like curtains, and Vanya had wanted her fort to have a tunnel for an entrance. Let's see. So it's probably somewhere at her house. I just don't know if it's in the front yard or in the backyard. So we'll say at her house. Somewhere. So the story takes place at her house. Outside. The story takes place at her house outside. I'm sure it's in the front yard. And then the last one says, what is Vanya building at the beginning of the story? She is building a fort. She is building a fort. All right, so that's it for Monday for homework. Moving on to our finding evidence. This is the back of our day 10, if you cannot find it. This one was called the Indianapolis 500. So it says, the greatest spectacle in racing begins with, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. The Indianapolis 500, or Indy 500 for short, is an auto race held just outside of Indianapolis in Speedway, Indiana. The race has been held annually on Memorial Day weekend since 1911. As the race starts, 250,000 spectators sit in the seats and up to 50,000 more gather in the infield. The open-wheel race cars then drive 200 laps, totaling 500 miles of driving by the end of the race. Each lap of the oval is 2.5 miles long. Drivers compete for $2.5 million and the chance to have their name and likeness added to the trophy. Winners of the Indianapolis 500 also like to kiss the bricks at the finish line. These bricks were kept to represent the original racing surface of bricks over the entire oval track. In 1933, winner Louis Meyer requested milk and began another winner's tradition, to drink a glass of milk in the winner's circle. The Indianapolis 500 is one of the oldest and most important automobile races in the world. For many families, attending or watching the Indianapolis 500 race at the Brickyard is a Memorial Day tradition. So, very interesting story. So first it says, who first requested milk after winning? So someone started it by drinking milk in the winner's circle, and so now it's a thing. So that's going to be in blue. It was towards the end in the second paragraph. So it says, in 1933, winner Louis Meyer requested milk. So I'm going to write his name for the answer, Louis Meyer. In yellow, it says, what do winners often kiss after the race? So once again, it's in the second paragraph. It says, winners of the Indianapolis 500 also like to kiss the bricks. So I highlighted like to kiss the bricks. There. So I'm just going to put bricks for my answer. Then in red, it says, where does the Indianapolis 500 take place? So we know that it's in India. In Indiana, not India. And it's in the first paragraph. It says, held just outside of Indianapolis in Speedway, Indiana. So Speedway, Indiana. Speedway, Indiana. Then it says, why was the line of bricks kept in the track? So if you look at it, it says, winners of the Indianapolis 500 also like to kiss the bricks at the finish line. These bricks were kept to represent the original racing surface of bricks over the entire oval track. So that is in purple. So I'm going to start with represent. To represent the original racing surface of bricks over the entire oval track. So why was the line of bricks kept in the track? To represent the original racing surface. And I'll stop after that. To represent the original racing surface. In green, it says, how long is the race in total? So it told us that each lap is 2.5 miles. This is in the second paragraph. It says the open wheel race cars then drive 200 laps, totaling 500 miles of driving. So how long is the race in total? 500 miles. You highlight that part in green. 500 miles. And then in orange, when was the first running of the 500? So if we look, it says the race has been held annually on Memorial Day weekend since 1911. So I'm just going to put Memorial Day weekend, 1911. Memorial Day weekend, 1911. All right, here's my highlighting. I have red, orange, green, yellow, purple, blue. And here are my answers. Moving on to math. We have looking at fractions. So I'm going to start with the front side. It said to compare fractions, determine which figure has more area shaded. If necessary, find equivalent fractions and compare the numerators. So they gave us the two models. We see 1/2 and 1/3. And if you still don't understand from like number 2, it's going to be confusing because it's still the same shaded portion. So then you look at equivalent fractions. So looking at number 1, we have 1, 2, 3, 3 equal parts. So that's my bottom number. 3 equal parts make a whole, and then only 1 is shaded. So it is 1/3. Looking at the other model, I have once again 3 equal parts that make up the whole, but 2 are shaded. So which one has more shaded parts? It's going to be 2/3. So 1/3 is less than 2/3. And the alligator mouth always eats the bigger fraction. Next for number 2, number of equal parts, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. The number shaded is 2, so 2 is my numerator. Looking at the next model, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 equal parts make up a whole, and then 4 are shaded. So that one would be 4/8. So I have 2/4 and 4/8. Since they both have the same amount of their model shaded, then it's going to be equivalent fractions. So they are equal to each other. Looking at number 3, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 equal parts with 3 of them shaded. And then the next one, I have 2 equal parts with only 1 part being shaded. So I have 1/2 and 3/8. Now what you do notice though, that if this one were to have been shaded in, then they would have been equivalent fractions, 4/8 and 1/2. However, since this one part isn't shaded, this has more shaded amount than this. So this is my greater fraction. So I'll have 3/8 is less than 1/2. 3/8 is less than 1/2. Looking at number 4, I have 3 equal parts that make up the whole, and only 1 is shaded. And then next to it, I have 6 equal parts that make up the whole, and 2 of those parts are shaded. So once again, if I look at it, they both have the same amount shaded of their whole. So even though this one has 2 and that only has 1, it's still the same shaded amount. So those are equivalent fractions. They are equal to one another. Looking at number 5, I have 4 equal parts and 3 are shaded. So I have 3/4. And then the other model, I have 4 equal parts, but only 2 are shaded. So I have 3/4 and 2/4. And I see that 3/4 is the greater fraction. So 3/4 is greater than 2/4. Next, I have 2 equal parts that make up my whole, and only 1 is shaded, so that's 1/2. Then I have 4 equal parts that make up the whole, and 3/4 is shaded. Now this one has more of a shaded amount than this, so this one is my greater fraction. So I have 1/2 is less than 3/4. 1/2 is less than 3/4. So not only are we able to compare fractions, but we can compare fractions that have the same numerator or the same denominator. And then we can also justify the comparisons as well, explain it. Looking at the back, it says draw a picture of each fraction and then write greater than, less than, or equal to compare each pair of fractions. So looking at number 1, I'm just going to do circles. 3 equal parts, 1 part is shaded, 3 equal parts, all 3 parts are shaded. So we all know the one with the whole shaded is going to be the greater fraction, so 1/3 is less than 3/3. Looking at number 2, I'm going to do the same thing. I have 4, so I'm going to draw 2 circles with 4 equal parts. 1/4 will be shaded, and then 3/4 will be shaded. I can see that 3/4 has the more shaded amount, so my fraction is going to be 1/4 is less than 3/4. Then I have 6 equal parts. I'm going to draw circles. And to make it easier, because I was having such a hard time drawing 6 equal parts, you can just draw a vertical line and then you draw an X. So like right here, I drew a vertical line going up and down, and then I drew an X to make 6 equal parts. So 4/6 is shaded in. That's more than 1/2. And then 1/6 is shaded in. So we see that 4/6 is greater. So 4/6 is greater than 1/6. Next, for number 4, we have halves, 2 equal parts. One with 1/2 being shaded in and the other one with 2 halves. So both parts are shaded in. And so, of course, the one with both parts shaded in is the greater fraction. So 1/2 is less than 2 halves. Looking at number 5, we have 8 equal parts. To act like I'm drawing 4 equal parts, and then I draw an X. Act like I'm drawing 4 equal parts, and then I draw an X. So we have 7/8 shaded in, and then we have 5/8 shaded in. I can see that 7/8 has more shaded in, so our fraction is going to be 7/8 is greater than 5/8. And then the last one, we have 2/4 and 1/4. I draw my 4 equal parts. I'm shading in 2/4, so I'm shading in 1/2, and then I'm shading in 1/4. I can see that 2/4 has more shaded in than 1/4, so 2/4 is greater than 1/4. Taking a look at number 7, it says each pair of fractions above has the same denominator. So once again, like that's why it was so easy to draw these circles, is because they had, and compare them because they had the same denominator. So it says complete the statement. If the denominators are the same, the fraction with the smaller numerator is blank. So the fraction with the fraction with the smaller numerator is smaller, or is less than. So I just put smaller. Now we're taking a look at the same numerator in this case. So we're going to have different parts to whole. So I have halves and thirds for this first one. I have 2 halves shaded in, and then I have 2/3 shaded in. So as we can see that 2 halves is greater than 2/3. So 2 halves is greater than 2/3. Alligator mouth eating the bigger fraction. The next one, for number 9, we have 1/6 and 1/3. So I have 6 equal parts. So I draw my vertical line and then my X. And then I have 1/3, 3 equal parts. So I have 1/6 and then 1/3. You can see that 1/3 right here is greater. So 1/6 is less than 1/3. Next, we have 8s and 4s. So I shade in 4 of those 8 equal parts, and then I shade in my whole circle for the next one. So we can see that 4/4 is greater than 4/8. So I'm going to have 4/8 is less than 4/4. 4/8 is less than 4/4. Taking a look at thirds and halves. So I have 1/3 shaded in, and then 1/2 shaded in. Once again, just like the top, our 1/2 is going to be greater than our 1/3 because it has more shaded in. So 1/3 is less than 1/2. Number 12, we have 6 and 8s. So once again, for the 6, vertical line, and then you draw your X. And then 8s, I'm acting like I'm doing 4s, and then I make an X. So then I shade in 3/6, which is 1/2 of the circle, and then I shade in 3/8. So I can say that 3/6 has a greater amount than 3/8. So 3/6 is greater than 3/8. And then our last one, we have 5/6 and 5/8. So right here, you can see 5, 6. There's only one that's not shaded in, and then 5, 8. I have 3 that are not shaded in. So 5, 6 is greater than 5, 8. So number 14 says each pair of fractions above has the same numerator. So the same number of parts was shaded for each one. This says complete the statement. If the numerators are the same, the fraction with the smaller denominator is, and it's bigger. Those fractions with the smaller denominator are bigger, meaning their bottom number. So say for instance, halves and thirds. Halves, since it's a smaller number, it's still going to be bigger. You have 6 and thirds. So even though 3 is a smaller number, the pieces are going to be bigger. So once again, we can compare fractions, justify the comparisons, and compare fractions that have the same numerator or the same denominator. So that was it for the math. Next we have social studies. It's now our week 3 packet. So let's take a look at day 11. It says the president is the leader of the country. He or she names the leaders of many departments. They work for the president. He or she also meets with leaders from other countries. They talk about trade and make agreements. These agreements help people to get jobs. The president can work for 4 years. If the people vote for him or her again, the president can work for one more 4-year term. So, for example, Barack Obama, he had his 4-year term and everyone voted for him again. So then he was able to work for 4 more years. So he was our president for 8 years. Same thing will happen with Trump. He is about to finish up with his 4th year of being president. And so then there will be another campaign, whether or not someone else should be the president or he can be the president again for 4 years. After that, it will be another person's turn to be president. Their max can only be 8 years. The vice president needs to be ready. If something happens to the president, the vice president will take his or her place. The vice president votes in the Senate if there is a tie vote. The vice president works with the president and gives him or her advice. The executive office of the president and the cabinet help the president too. They give the president advice and help put laws in place. So for number 1, it says the president is very busy. Which of these is not true? So A says he can sign laws and put them in a place, which is true. B says he names leaders of many departments, which is also true. That was the second sentence of the passage. C says the president can work for 12 years, which is incorrect. They can only be president for 8 years. So C is not correct. So you would circle C. And then D says it meets with leaders from other countries, which is true. So number 1 is C as in cat. 2, which is the vice president's most important role? So we see this in the second paragraph of this passage. It says, be ready to take the senator's place. That's not the place he would be taking. B, name all of the cabinet members. He doesn't do that. C, vote in the Senate all the time. He doesn't do that. And then D says, be ready to take the president's place, which was our second sentence in that second paragraph. So that is true. So D as in dog. So that was it for our Monday, or our day 11 in that case. Taking a look at science. We're talking about biomes. So it says, not all of Earth is the same. Some places get a lot of rain. Some places don't get very much rain at all. Some places are hot, some places are cold, and some can be both. Scientists can call these different kinds of places biomes. Biomes are very large areas of Earth. So here's some different biomes. First, we have a desert. Desert biomes get very little rain. They're usually sunny because there are no clouds. Not all deserts are hot. There are some very cold deserts. The plants in a desert don't need a lot of water. Like a cactus. A cactus can store a lot of water. Forest biomes have a lot of trees. They get a lot of rain or snow, which helps the trees grow. The tall trees block the sun, so the forest floor is shady. It usually has a damp feeling to it because all the water and that moisture is still sitting there. Grassland. Grassland biomes get enough rain for grasses to grow, but not enough for a lot of trees. They get a lot of sun and wind, and grasslands are usually located between deserts and forests. And then you have tundra. The tundra biomes are the coldest biome. They get little or no rain, and there are no trees. Tundra lands are frozen most of the time. In the summer, the top few inches of the ground thaw out. The soil is shallow, wet, and squishy. Sometimes flowers bloom. Then you have the aquatic biome has two regions. You have freshwater and marine. The freshwater regions include ponds and lakes, streams and rivers and wetlands. And the marine region includes the oceans where the water is salty. So whenever they're talking about marine life, they're talking about animals or sea creatures that live out in the ocean. Freshwater regions are more for fish, anything that lives within the stream. So number 1 says the desert and tundra are alike because they both blink. So we know that deserts do not have trees and that tundras have no trees. So it can't be C. B says that they get very little rain. And if you look at it, deserts do get very little rain. Tundras, though, get very little rain as well. And then A says there are cold biomes. So deserts can be both cold and hot. So we're going to go with B, that they get very little rain. Number 2 says what biome is usually located between forest and deserts? And if you look, grassland says grasslands are usually located between deserts and forests. They put in grasslands. And then number 3 says, what is the main difference between the two regions of the aquatic biome? So you have freshwater and marine. So you have, and then, so it's asking for the difference. Well, one is ponds and lakes, and the other marine region is oceans. So it's because one is salty and the other one isn't. One region is salty and the other isn't. That's why it's called freshwater. All right. So that was it for our day 11 for science. So I'm going to put that up to talk about 5 more books today. This has been a really fast video, and I don't know why. I'm sure it's because I'm speeding. So we're going to start with The Invention of Hugo Cabret, or Cabret. So the quote right above him says, machines never have any extra parts. They have the exact number and type of parts they need. So I figure if the entire world is a big machine, I have to be here for some reason. And that means you have to be here for some reason too. So it's a very brilliant and intelligent quote. So this book, The Invention of Hugo Cabret, begins like a movie. The black and white illustration set the scene with a dark night and a full moon. So as the reader turns the pages, the scene transforms into morning in Paris, France. The story is about a 12-year-old boy, Hugo, who is an orphan secretly living inside the walls of a Paris train station. Before Hugo's father, a clockmaker, passed away in a fire, he had been fixing an adult-sized wind-up figure. Now, Hugo is determined to fix the figure himself, even if that means stealing. Hugo believes that once reassembled, the figure will reveal a message left for him by his father. After he's caught stealing mechanical parts from a toy shop in the station, Hugo develops relationships with the shop's owner. George, who is a character based on a famous filmmaker, Georges Méliès, who collected wind-up figures, and his book-smart goddaughter. Little does Hugo know, cranky George and his goddaughter may be able to help him reach his goal. So this is a gorgeous book. It was made 13 years ago. It's historical fiction. It does have a lot of pages, 533. It's a big, massive book, but it can look a little bit imitating. However, intimidating. More than half of the book's pages are illustrated, and it's a very easy read. So it has a lot of pictures in it. The illustrations are so very cool, and the drawings are a vital component of the story and provide important clues to the ever-evolving mystery. So this book did turn into a movie called Hugo. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards, and it won 5. All right, so our second book, The One and Only Ivan. I am dying to read this book. It's for ages 8 and older. The genre is on animals. It was made 8 years ago, and the page count is 336. Disney announced in 2014 that they might make an adaptation of the book, so fingers crossed. So the quote that they left above it was, "Humans waste words, they toss them like banana peels and leave them to rot. Everyone knows the peels are the best part." So this is a best-selling novel, The One and Only Ivan. It's a beautiful story of hope and friendship inspired by a real silverback gorilla named Ivan, who was held captive for 27 years. It's narrated by Ivan himself. The story is about Ivan's friendship with an elephant named Stella and a stray dog named Bob. Ivan is comfortable in a shopping mall domain where he watches TV and creates artwork that is sold to the spectators who watch him through glass windows far from the jungle. Stella, on the other hand, has a longer memory than Ivan, and she longs to live in a zoo where larger habitats are provided. Ruby, a baby elephant who has been plucked from the wild, is introduced to the Big Top Mall to learn circus tricks from Stella. But soon after, Stella becomes sick. Before she passes away, she puts Ruby in Ivan's care, and over time, Ivan begins to recall his life in the jungle. His desire for freedom and drive to help Ruby grows. So this is a very neat book. It's very popular. It'll make you feel all kinds of emotions. There's an author's note at the end of the book, which is also a wonderful addition. The author, Catherine Applegate, she discusses the differences between the true events in Ivan's life and her story. So the real life Ivan is a Western lowland gorilla who was adopted by the Zoo Atlanta in 1994, and he was a cherished member of the Zoo Atlanta family until he passed away at age 50. So he was able to become at least 50 years old. Now this is another neat book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which I'm sure you guys have at least heard a million things about it. Not even just the book, but the film as well. So their quote that they use said, "There is no living thing that is not afraid when it faces danger. The true courage is in facing danger when you are afraid, and that kind of courage you have in plenty." So this is based off of a cyclone, good and bad witches, powerful wizard, wolves, winged monkeys, and a pair of magical shoes. This is a fantasy genre. It was made over 100 years ago. And its page count is 389, but it's so good. It's made for ages 8 and older. So during a terrible storm, Dorothy and her little dog Toto are still inside their farmhouse when they are whisked away by a cyclone. When the house lands in a magical land right on top of the Wicked Witch of the East, Dorothy and Toto discover they are not in Kansas anymore. The Good Witch of the North arrives and tells Dorothy to follow the yellow brick road to the Emerald City of Oz and seek out a wizard who can help her return home. On her way, Dorothy befriends a scarecrow, a tin woodman, and a cowardly lion. The three of them help her along on her journey to Oz, and she could use the help because the Wicked Witch of the West, the sister to the fallen Witch of the East, will stop at nothing to make sure Dorothy and her new companions never make it to the Emerald City. So The Wonderful Wizard of Oz has everything you could possibly want. It has pictures to go with it. It's such an incredible action book, and it's about whimsical adventure. You're probably wondering if Dorothy ever makes it to the wizard and if he's truly wonderful. And will Dorothy and her friends ever defeat the Wicked Witch and make it home? So it says, "Did you know the Library of Congress called the book America's greatest and best loved homegrown fairy tale?" It also, while The Wizard of Oz, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz is the most well known, the author actually wrote a whole series of Oz books. So he has a continuation of these books. And of course, it has been adapted into both a Broadway musical and a very famous film that everyone knows. Go into book 39, which would be our fourth book. This one is called El Deafo. So it's based loosely on the author's childhood and growing up hearing impaired. She depicted the characters as bunnies because they are known for having big ears and excellent hearing. So here's the image of the bunny. And it says, this is not your typical superhero book. So this is a graphic novel. It's the superhero book you've been waiting for. El Deafo shows us that our differences are our superpowers. So it's 248 pages, but once again, it's a graphic novel. It was made 6 years ago. So what if you couldn't hear and couldn't make friends? These are the two things that C.C. Bell, once again, and this C.C. Bell is the author and the illustrator. So it's based off of her, just through bunnies. Very Sweet Rabbit thinks about every day. It can be hard to make friends, but it's extra hard for a hearing impaired rabbit. At age 4, Cece lost her hearing due to an infection known as spinal meningitis. At her old school, everyone was deaf, but at her new school, the phonic ear she must strap to her chest so she can hear sets her apart from the other kids in her class. However, when it turns out that she is able to hear things others cannot, she realizes she has a newfound superpower and she gives herself the secret superhero name, El Deafo. So it is once again a graphic novel, and the picture shows Cece coming to terms with her disability and herself. And then our last book is called The Year of the Dog. So I have not heard of this one. It's also for 8 years and older. It's more realistic, and it was made 15 years ago and has a page count of 160 pages. So this is your year to read The Year of the Dog. Friendship and family are the key to exploring 1 year in the life of Passy, the only Taiwanese American girl at her school. It's the Chinese Year of the Dog, and it's the year that Passy is supposed to find herself. When she meets Melody, another Asian girl, luck comes her way. The girls work together on a science fair project, they enter a book contest, and they discuss everything from Halloween costumes to boys. Thanks to this new friendship and to the support of her parents, Passy begins to blossom to her true self. This is a book for everyone, no matter who you are and where you come from. Readers will see how Pacey navigates the typical challenges of growing up while also trying to find a balance between two cultures. Be sure to read The Year of the Dog when you're in the mood for something deliciously sweet, and like the last dumpling on the plate, don't leave it on the shelf for too long. So it says, did you know that this author wrote The Year of the Dog because it was the book she wished she had when she was growing up, a book with someone like her in it? So that wraps up with our book number 40 out of all that we have discussed, and with our fifth book, and we will have a new book tomorrow to talk about. So stay tuned, and y'all have a great afternoon and great weekend.